Hey, Vaughn.
Hey Kim, how are you?
I am fine. How are you?
I do well.
Well, it is officially the first day. No, it is the second day of the NFL year because today is March 13th.
Yes.
If I am right on that.
Yes.
So second day of the NFL year, and we are here with our podcast, but first football. So of course, what can we possibly talk about but free agency, which
Yes.
has been it's almost a little bit anticlimactic because it's kind of been happening. You know, you were explaining to us like the period of non-tampering, whatever it is, non-tampering conversations, and we've talked about that. So, but yet it seems like it's been happening for a week now. So
Right.
when free agency actually started, it was like ho hum,
Yeah.
right?
The deals have been negotiated. It's just putting the ink on the paper.
Right. So you are going to take us in our fundamental piece through free agency, what it is, what it
Yes.
isn't.
Yeah.
And I think you have a story to share about that. So I'll let you go ahead and take us away. We'll get started on that.
So as you mentioned, we kind of hit a little bit of how things work in terms of a lot happens at the combine before the official window opens. You know, people are flirting with each other. Hey, would X player be interested in coming to X team and all those shenanigans? But ultimately, look, it's a negotiation, right? And it's about for the player, it's about having hopefully a handful of teams interested, which of course will up the price you ultimately sign for. And for teams, it's about navigating your current roster, how you can improve it in the most expedient way, but also where can we get the biggest bang for the buck, right? And so, they've discussed how they're going to allocate their dollars in this given year. And hey, again, I just want to reiterate, perhaps there's a player who is a name player, but perhaps he's on the downside of his career. And while in the moment, he's still better than the young guy coming up behind him, but we're willing to live with the young guy's performance as the starter because we don't want to allocate those dollars to that player anymore, right? Or that position even. It might not just be the player, might be the position. We have an area of need that we want to put some of those dollars into, and so we'll go with the lesser performance and let that younger player grow into the position, even though player for player right now, that veteran perhaps is still better than the young guy who's behind him, right? So,
And
it,
but ultimately, Vaughn, it's all a gamble, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's
sure,
all a gamble.
sure. There's nothing's guaranteed that player's going to grow into the player you expect him to be. You know, he's shown enough flashes in practice, the opportunities he's gotten in game situations, which is now why, especially with the way the preseason goes now, which is why, and we'll talk about it more once the season gets going again, but why these joint practices are so important because you don't really necessarily get a lot of reps anymore with the having the preseason cut down in terms of the number of games, and then you have an agenda going in, and hey, I want to look at this player in this position. So really, these joint practices are where you get a lot of your work. And if you're lucky enough to live in the area where your team has training camp, then you can go and check those out. But yeah, it's really important to see how guys are going to develop and how they're going to be. And it's a projection, right?
Right.
And we see they're always this draft, and I say it all the time because it's so true. There's going to be 10 of the top 10 picks. Three guys are going to be solid. 3 to 4 guys are going to be solid NFL players who know who pros, right? Show
Right.
up on time, know what to do. There's going to be three that two of those two that are going to be excellent, and two of those are going to be like Pro Bowl level. Perhaps one will be a Hall of Famer. You never know. And then there's going to be three guys who are going to be absolutely talked about as busts, all time busts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's just how it is. No matter how they try to quantify it and qualify it, there's no way to predict what these guys are ultimately going to be. And then there's some guy in the 7th round or undrafted who will be in the Hall of Fame, right? You just
Right.
don't
Right.
know.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, before you share with us a little more, it's funny because last week after the combine, I said I was not that enthused by the combine. And then you said you were not that enthused by free agency.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of thinking about it just now, like, as we talked about before the combine, so many of the guys weren't throwing at the combine. Like they do all that back of house stuff. And then we were also discussing how so much of this free agency kind of already happened. So
Mm-hmm.
these big days that used to be like, oh my God, it's the combine. Oh my God, it's the first day of free agency, is now it's a little bit anticlimactic.
Yeah.
You already know all of this stuff. All this stuff has been happening before the official day.
Right. And some of the moves, look, Chicago, I think, is doing what they need to do. They've traded for a couple offensive linemen. They signed one, I know, defensive tackle. And so I hate to say it, the strength positions, signing those guys, it's never going to be sexy, right? It's never going to be signing the diva wide receiver or the cornerback who declares I'm an island unto myself, right?
Yeah. I can imagine who you're talking about.
But I don't know for a fact he said it, but I could see Deion saying it, right? Deion Sanders, that is, for those who I don't want to just assume everyone knows who's Deion Sanders. But those are the little right now. That's how I kind of looked at it all. A lot of little moves that even though I know some of these guys are supposed to be big name guys, but it's all these little moves that improve your overall team and you win. It's still a game where you win in the trenches. So I like kind of what Chicago is doing. But to your point, yes, I said I wasn't crazy excited about what I had seen in free agency, and there's been a ton of moves, and I'm sure people will follow their teams. But it just reminded me of the negotiation part of it, right? It's a negotiation, and hopefully you play yourself into a position where you're coveted, multiple teams want you, and then it's wine and dine time. That's part of it too. Although, like we said, a lot of the guesswork and the pre-work, these deals are pretty much negotiated for the most part. The first few names that come off the board, and then it's just about getting the name on the paper. And so, but back in the day, there was a lot of whining and dining. You'd fly to this team, you'd sit down, talk with them, they take you to dinner. And so, in that spirit, in 2000, we were coming off of not a great few years, and we definitely wanted to upgrade our offensive line. And so Kevin Gogan was on the market. Now, Kevin Gogan, amongst being a Pro Bowler, All Pro with the Cowboys, played on some fantastic offensive lines. He was an intricate part of that. He was also several years in a row, I believe, voted the dirtiest player in the NFL. And
was he only on the Cowboys?
No. He came from Raiders? He played with the Niners.
Okay.
Right before he came to us, and that was my only experience. Really, we scrimmaged them. We flew up to Northern California during the preseason and had a scrimmage with them. And he's just when he's on the opposite sideline, you probably don't care for him very much. But I got to tell you, once he was on my team, couldn't ask for a better teammate. I loved him. He was an incredible teammate. Just and I'm not going to get into some of the very cool things he did for me, but when he was being recruited by us, the GM at the time, Billy Devaney, he asked me if I would go to dinner because they had Kevin Gogan come. I said, "Oh, well, sure. I'll do my part. Try to upgrade our team. Do what I can." And so we go to dinner, and I remember, so we're having a conversation, we're talking, and now they're kind of negotiating, but not really. But they're just saying, "Hey, this is what we're looking for. This is what we need. We think you fill this void for us." And I remember I was just shocked because one of the big things guys like to do from different eras is, hey, what's the most shocking thing when you first got to a team? And, I'd already been on the team for several years. And so to be shocked at that point was kind of, so the thing you always have to remember is that it's not like college where there's the king and then there's the serfs, which are the players, right? The king is the coach. What he says, go. We're all colleagues, and my coach is my coach, but we're colleagues, and it's a negotiation. And the GM, yes, he's hiring me, but so Kevin goes to Billy, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, but he goes to Billy, look, if I come here, you need to know I don't run and I don't work out. And so I'm sitting there listening. I'm like, what? I don't run. I don't do sprints. And I don't work out in the weight room. And so, but at the same time, you have to sit. Okay, well, he's been to Pro Bowls. He's been all pro. He's been all
Right.
fantastic.
Well, he's doing something
Clearly,
right.
whatever he's doing is working for him, right? And then to hear Billy say, "That's not a problem for us," right?
Oh my gosh. And you're like, oh, how do I get in on this?
And then the very funny part, the really funny part is during the season, you have 2 mandatory lifts per week, and whenever you get your lifts in is when you get your lifts in over the course of the week. We'd be in the weight room in the morning, early in the morning, getting our workouts in. In comes Gogan. There was all he had. He had over in the corner of the weight room a big barrel of rice, and he would just punch his hands into. Now he had a punch like 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 uh, like a jackhammer, basically. Like he punch your chest off. He would just sit there, look at us while we're lifting weights and whatever on the treadmill, and he's just punching his fist into this big barrel of
Like
rice. And
down?
then
Like down into it?
yeah, like so he's
Oh
just
my
punching down,
gosh.
right? Just to callous. My old coach used to always say on the offensive line, right? The offensive line needed to be like a calloused hand, and that's what basically he was doing. Toughen up his hands, get his punch ready, and then he'd be done. He'd give us the peace symbol and walk out of the weight room.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, so
Oh my gosh. And can you imagine? Would anyone be able to get away with that today?
you know what? I got to tell you, yes. And here's what I'll say. Joe Bugle, who was my coach for 4 years, I can't remember the exact years, but who was a legendary offensive line coach, and he coached the Hogs back when the Washington Redskins famously had this
Yep.
offensive line, very excellent offensive line. They were called the Hogs because the fans of this offensive line used to dress up in women's
I remember
dresses
those pig
and wear the
noses
big
and
pig noses and the, the,
hats.
the, the Sunday hats, and so they were the Hogs. And he used to always tell me, he said, look, there's nothing wrong with having double standards. Everyone doesn't get treated the same way because everyone doesn't bring the same value to the table. And so and it made sense to me. He told me in a way where it made sense. And from then on, I have always believed in having double standards. Some people get treated better, some people get treated differently, and life isn't fair. And it's
Right,
about the
right.
value you bring to the table, right? And so I think there's still enough old school guys in the league, around the league, where because and so his example of telling me this, he was like, look, and I think he was joking halfway, but to a point. John Riggins, he said, John only dressed for Sundays. We didn't make him practice, right? And here's the thing, and here's the point of that, specifically at that position, they take so much of a pounding that if you're 6, 7 year, 8 year bell cow running back needs to take Wednesdays off so he can be his best on Sunday,
Yeah.
then that's what you do, and you don't worry that your starting safety has a problem with that because he needs
Right.
to understand
Right.
why we're
Right.
doing this because that's going to help us on Sunday, right?
Well, it makes sense. It does.
Yeah, yeah.
But so was Rogan really in Rogan?
Gogan, Kevin
Gogan.
Gogan.
Gogan. Was he in good shape? I mean, do you think he like secretly lifted weights?
Well, look, Kevin was 6'6", probably 3, and if he's listening, I don't want to 330, 340, and so he's a big man, but he played every snap. He danced every dance, right? And he
I
played at a
gotta look
high.
him up. I kind of like I can visualize the name on the jersey, but I'm not sure I really remember him, so I'm gonna look him up.
When he walked into a room, he filled the
You
whole
knew.
dorm room. And he was nasty. Like he had the perfect offense, super smart, incredibly funny. And when the whistle blew, he was your worst nightmare. And just but just a fantastic teammate. And it was so funny. And that again, you're always learning lessons. But I learned the lesson the feelings you have for someone when they're across the field are very different once you get to know. I had a similar experience with Marty Schottenheimer. When Marty, when he came here, I was like, oh, I don't really care for this guy because he's coming from Kansas City, and we had this. I don't know how much of a rivalry it was at the time because they were
still divisional
yeah,
rivalry.
right.
There's
So they were,
something there.
but they were down. The rivalry needs to be kind of back and forth, and we weren't really winning many of those games. But then it turned out he was probably one of my favorite coaches I ever played for. So it's different when the guy's in the room with you. And so so like I said, I was kind of paying a little bit of attention to what was going on with the free agency, but it reminded me of that free agency story, so I just thought I'd share that.
No, it's a good one. So do you think that your presence at dinner made him really want to come to San Diego?
I like to think so, but it's probably more the money.
I doubt it. Let's get him on here and find out.
Oh, you know what? Just really quickly, let me tell you this one Kevin Gogan story. We were playing San Francisco, and this is when we had Ryan Leaf, who actually I bumped into Ryan at a Charger alumni day a couple of years ago, and I'm glad he's kind of gotten his life turned around. But at the time, he was very difficult to deal with and just a little bit immature. And we're playing Gogan's old team, the 49ers, here at Qualcomm, and Ryan is getting the call called into his helmet, but he's cursing out the sideline, like, just shut the bleep up, blah, 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 blah. So we go to the line of scrimmage, and in the middle of the cadence, blue 42, in the middle of the cadence, Gogan, who's playing left guard, turns around to Ryan and says, "Who the bleep do you think you are, Joe Bleep in Montana?" And now I'm hearing this in the middle of his cadence, and I'm like, "Oh man, like, we are in trouble. Like, I don't know if we're gonna get this first down." Sure enough, we didn't get the first down. But that's who Kevin was. Like, he had the gravitas where, like, he's so well respected by everyone on the team.
Right.
And he just was like, "Who are you? You haven't done anything in this league. In fact, you've been a detriment thus far, and you're gonna curse out the sideline like that. Well, I'm gonna put you in your place, right? Doesn't matter that you're in the middle of the cadence."
Wow. Well, Ryan Leaf substitutes for Dan Patrick now sometimes on the Dan Patrick show.
Yeah. I've seen that.
Yeah.
And actually,
that's interesting.
My most recent Ryan Leaf stories, he was on I don't remember the show, but he has been doing a lot of media, kind of rehabbing his image, and nicely, I should say. Like, I root for him. And my buddies up in Canada sent me a clip of him because he was talking about me, how I got his first touchdown called back. Because apparently, I didn't really remember this, but apparently he threw this like 50-yard bomb, and I got called for being, I can't remember if it was holding or false start, one of the two. But then not that he backtracked off what he said, but then he did kind of give me a compliment after the fact, so I didn't feel so bad.
You were not a highly penalized player.
No, but it happens. Look, it happens.
It does happen, yeah. Well, so I'll tell you my free agency story.
Okay.
Because while you have been unenthused about free agency, I have been rather enthused, at least about what the Bucks have been doing. So Elizabeth's home for spring break, and we went to yoga on Monday, even though I have a whole other story with my knees and what happened at the Bucks 5K. We all know that was not a good idea. So I go to yoga, but I told Elizabeth, because my watch was dinging with, little updates for free agency. And I said, if I say, "Oh my God," or I freak out, that means we either kept Chris Godwin or we lost him. So she's like, "Well, please don't freak out in yoga." And I'm like, I'll try, but I can't promise anything. So nothing happened in yoga, except I had to spend a lot of time in Shavasana because really yoga was not working out so well for me with my knee situation.
Yeah.
So a lot of Shavasana. Got home, and within about maybe 15, 20 minutes of getting home, I start screaming and jumping around, and Elizabeth comes out, "Are we keeping Godwin?" I'm like, "We're keeping Godwin!" Like, I can't even tell you how happy that made me. It was like, it really, I mean, it was joyous.
No.
So he's a wonderful person, and he left like $20 million on the table. The Patriots were going to pay him $20 million more, but
Right.
he wanted to stay here. He's part of the community, he's part of the team.
Yeah.
So I was super excited about that. And then we kept Levante is going to play one more year.
Mm-hmm.
Bresden, we kept him, and Anthony Nelson, we kept him. So I felt like there were some good keeps. And then we got, and I'm wondering what you think about this, but I think it's probably good, Hassan Reddick.
Yeah.
Remember last year he sat out, like he got traded. Didn't he get traded from Philadelphia
From Philly to the Jets? Yes.
And then he didn't like his contract, and he literally sat out, and it cost him like a few $1,000,000, right?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. So my theory is he's really going to have something to prove, right? I mean, it's a 1-year deal. It's more money than I'll ever make. But in football world, probably not a lot of money. But I feel like it could be a good pickup for us because he's got to be kind of, pissed. And so sometimes that's good.
And 1-year deal, right? That's a prove it deal, right?
Yep.
So he's still looking for that big contract. So he's got a lot of incentive to do all he can and play well. So
yeah. So I felt like that was a good thing for us.
Yeah, definitely. So I will say a lot of the pundits who I saw kind of giving grades on free agency, they gave Tampa a B. So I don't know how you feel about that, but
wah, because nobody ever gives Tampa anything, whatever. I think it's good. I love Chris Godwin. I'm super happy that he's back. I mean, that truly made, I think everybody in Tampa was so happy. We were all so happy. Everyone was happy. And we have to be happy because guess what happened today? The Rays backed out of their stadium deal. So we may not even have a baseball team.
Oh,
we
wow.
don't even know. Yeah. So that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But we need, good sports stories because that just happened today. I figured it was going to happen. But because, the roof blew off during the hurricane.
Yes.
They're supposed to build a new stadium, but they were going to make upgrades to the Trop so they could play there while they were building the new stadium. Then, of course, it's kind of like the whole city of St. Pete has to, get rebuilt, and not just the Trop.
Right.
But St. Pete made a lot of concessions, and the Rays came back. That owner, Stuart Sternberg, he literally just screwed St. Pete, basically. It's really kind of sad. And the Rays have to play at the Yankees spring training facility all season this year. Outside in Tampa.
Okay.
In the summer. I'm not going to be there. That's just not going to be pleasant.
You never know, though. That there's always, those high-level negotiations and just trying to get.
Well, there's a few groups. One of whom is Eddie DeBartolo's part of that may buy the Rays, which I think would be great. So we'll see what happens. But that was kind of a blow.
Florida.
He lives here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the DeBartolos live here.
Interesting.
Yep. His son-in-law, Chad Chronister, is our sheriff, Hillsborough County Sheriff.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So they're. Yeah, I just always assumed they were a Northern California family.
They're from Youngstown, Ohio, and then I mean they split time between many places.
Yeah.
Tampa base. Anyway, so that's the Tampa sports update for today.
And I guess it comes full circle because I remember specifically that Kevin always had great things to say about the DeBartolo family and how they always took care of their players.
I have heard that as well.
Yeah.
And I know that many of them come, like Candy has a restaurant here, Sacred Pepper, and the first several years that it was open, she would have like an anniversary party, and those players showed up. Jerry Rice always came. He's the one I remember most, but yes, the DeBartolos are, I believe, very beloved.
And that's what I should say very quickly is that the DeBartolos used to own the 49ers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and when he got into the Hall of Fame, I remember asking his wife Candy, I'm like, you've got to tell me about, where did you guys stay? Because Canton, Ohio.
Yeah, there's not many options.
And she told me, she said, Kim, we stayed at the Hampton Inn. I'm like,
Hamptonality.
So I always thought that was pretty interesting. But other notable things, so what I wanted to get your take on, so we talked last week, you and I, about Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
So, you had said basically a lot of times that game is played like, what can you do to make me happier, even though we're probably never going to win anything. Right. So it seems as if they've done that.
Yes. Fat new contract. I don't remember numbers off, but huge contract. And so, it's rare that any of us get everything we want. And so I think he's in a situation where the security for himself and his family was worth re-signing. And I'm sure part of that was not just the signing, but really taking him through, hey, here's how we're going to improve this team sooner rather than later. And it's not just going to be you toiling in misery over these next few years, despite yourself playing at a high level. No, here's how we're going to get the team to catch up to the level that you're playing at.
Well, as far as I know, they still don't have a quarterback. So that's going to be kind of tricky. I don't think they've signed anyone yet. Or, well, no one notable. I think, I don't know.
I mean, because obviously the Deshaun Watson situation has been sour for quite some time, and that's, he's never going to come back to where he was, right? He's not a player. He's got other stuff. Plus, he's got other stuff to worry about. But I don't have it offhand, but I want to say I saw a name. Maybe they were just considering a name. I'll find out and have it ready.
I think you're right. I think they did get someone. And then the other one that I thought was super interesting and surprising was Josh Sweat, who just had such an incredible Super Bowl.
Arizona.
He was an animal in the Super Bowl, and now he's in Arizona.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah. Again,
that's weird.
Well, again, you never quite know exactly why. Could it be family ties? I don't know offhand where he went to school, but it's just, the point is you never know exactly why a guy picks a place. And look, some people probably think that Arizona is one of the teams on the rise. That division, obviously, you got to try to go catch the
Rams.
The Rams, who've kind of been the cream of the crop of that division for forever. And they, especially with, they got the receiver from Ohio State, Marvin Harrison Jr. So I don't want to just out of hand dismiss it as, hey, he just went to get paid, because again, I think there are some good things to say about the Arizona Cardinals, where perhaps he sees himself as being a building block and helping them get over the hump.
Well, I would venture to say that the Cardinals will take second place in that division, because I think Seattle, I don't really understand what they're doing. and the 49ers are rebuilding clearly,
Yeah.
with the decisions that they've made.
Yeah, they
So
lost a
it's
lot of
really
time.
just about the Rams. Um, and then let's see, there was a couple others. Obviously, I think we talked about last week, Geno Smith. I was happy to see him go to the Raiders. I like that. I think that's a good move. Daniel Jones to the Colts. So clearly they're pushing Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be a little quarterback competition there.
You know what? I don't see it that way. I see it as probably Anthony Richardson, you're our starter, but just in case things go south, because
Just in case you get tired again.
Well, I was going to say we've seen enough red flags that perhaps things might not work out, and in that case, here's our backstop. But and look, just that position, their psyches are so fragile at that position. I'm sure they had to talk with, look, Anthony, we're not bringing him into, no, you're our guy, right? They're selling him on, you're our guy until you're not. That's what it is.
Until you're not. Well, we'll see, because I don't know. Daniel Jones, I am not. I mean, good thing I don't like the Colts. I don't care about the Colts. I have no feeling for the Colts whatsoever, because they're just one of those teams to me. But what I thought for the Chargers, that pickup of Najee Harris is a nice little pickup. Did you like that?
Yeah, he's super solid. I think people are a little disappointed in his career just because he has similar size to Derrick Henry. They both played at Alabama, and I think people just assumed he would be the second coming of Derrick Henry when Derrick Henry is one in a millennium type player.
Yeah, no,
To
there
be
is no
that
one else.
physically gifted, have that physical size at that position, there's no one else is going to be able to do that. He's at 1,000 yards rushing every year he's been in the NFL, and he hasn't been playing behind great offensive lines. So I actually expect maybe his production will go up, because he's going to have some holes, because the Chargers, have a great offensive, they have great tackles. And Jim Harbaugh loves running the rock, right? So, he's going to have holes to run through and get to that second level. And so I think perhaps he'll shine more than he was able to in Pittsburgh due to, the offensive line woes that they've had in Pittsburgh over these last.
I thought that was a good pickup.
Yeah, I like it. I like it for sure.
And then the last one, just to mention, what do you think about Justin Fields going to the Jets? I think it's, I mean, I feel for that kid. He really played so well at Ohio State. I'll never forget that national championship game. That was exciting. He played amazing. And then, I mean, we know what happened at the Bears. That was
I'm always skeptical of Ohio State quarterbacks, just because Ohio State quarterbacks aren't exactly throwing in tight windows. Ohio State quarterbacks are throwing to receivers that are 30 yards beyond any defender, right? Like that's pretty consistent. They recruit so well at that position that they're very rarely stressed at Ohio State. And not to beat up on him, because he clearly has talent, but I hate the fact that he's going to the Jets, because they just don't seem like a well-oiled machine right now, like a well-run organization. No. I'm saying, and so but I think he just wanted to be wanted. Like, he wanted to go to a team that wanted him, and it wasn't going to be, hey, we're going to bring this guy in too. He's like, which matters. So I'm hoping he feels that love and is able to get his career on track and be the guy everyone thinks he can be.
I hope so, for his sake.
Yeah.
But those were the moves that caught my attention.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to just, so I told you I did I can't even keep my elbow on the table. The run that the 5K that I did with the Bucks, I wanted to tell you what that was all about. So, it was all about She Belongs in Football. So it was all about girls in football.
Okay.
It was really well attended. Like it was sold out. There were thousands and thousands of people there, and there were all these flag football teams, all these female flag football teams.
Mm-hmm.
It was very, very cool, and the whole weekend was a celebration of women in football.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I've told you about Erin Andrews and what's her name? I never can remember her name. Carissa Thompson.
Yes.
They have a podcast called Calm Down. I've told you about that.
Yes.
Well, they recorded that podcast live at the Leadership Summit, which was on the Friday. So that was on the Friday, this huge women's leadership summit. I think like 800 women were there. Saturday was the 5K, and Saturday afternoon was the flag football tournament. So it was really, really cool and nice to see such a focus on women in the game, and the Bucks have always been on the forefront of that.
Right.
So that's what that was all about. And my unfortunate fall and disgusting accident of my wrecked up knees kind of really put a damper on it, but it was a really great, cool concept. So hopefully they'll do it again next year, and I'll be not bloody and messy.
Hopefully so.
I liked it.
On
It was
both counts.
cool. It was awesome. So
yeah, that's
so
pretty
shout
cool.
out to the Bucks for the focus on women in football.
Definitely
liked that.
Definitely. Nice.
So we're at time, and so now we'll still have kind of the watch for where Russell and where Aaron Rodgers end up. Those are like the two names that are still. Oh, and Cooper Kupp. Those are like the big names that are kind of like, where are they going to go? Where are they going to end up? So
I wouldn't mind seeing
we'll see.
Cooper Kupp and Aaron Rodgers end up in Pittsburgh. I know Aaron's flirting with Pittsburgh right now, and so Cooper Kupp, Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, that would be interesting.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that's where DK Metcalf is. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Oh,
Russell, the Giants? I mean...
Oh, brutal.
I don't know. It would be brutal. But, so if Tennessee picks Cam Ward, which I feel like they should, but who knows? I don't know. But there's still a few names out there that we'll have to see what happens.
The Giants are just where careers go to die right now. So
For sure.
Oh, they can't get much right. So. But I digress.
Neither New York team. Neither New York football is just hell.
Yeah, definitely.
Hell. All right. Well, thank you for the great story. I'm gonna do a little research on Gogan.
Kevin Gogan.
I want to see if I remember him. And let's get him on and talk to him. And then maybe next week, some more free agency stories, secrets from the Vaughn Parker vault.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thanks for the info, and have a good one. Peace.
Okay.
Everyone, like us, follow us, subscribe, but first football.
All right. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.